Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of my YouTube channel. My name is Jake Fryman. I'm a realtor here in Dayton, Ohio with Keller Williams Community Partners. And each week I hop on this channel and I talk a little bit about the real estate industry, about what's going on in the market, and offer some helpful tips and advice to potential buyers and sellers. So on this week's episode, I wanted to talk about title companies, kind of the unsung hero of the real estate process, and talk about what they do. You've probably heard of title companies, you might have seen their ads, you've probably heard your agent or your lender talk about them before. What does a title company do? So they're kind of like the mastermind behind the transaction, kind of like the organizer, the one keeping everything organized and under process on time. Basically, the title company, they process all the paperwork for the transaction. So after you're under contract, they get sent the contract. Your lender sends them all of the lending documents, and they compile all that together, put it into a nice little package, and then they have it sent off to closing. And then usually at closing, you'll have a guy or girl sitting there at the table with a whole stack of papers for you to sign, whether you're the buyer or the seller, and they'll explain each paper. It's what they have put together in their office, the whole packet for the home closing process. The buyers have some documents to sign, the sellers have some documents to sign. Buyers are selling a lot of stuff related to the mortgage that they're purchasing, and then also some stuff for the house, like for the county processing, stuff like that. And then the sellers are signing some stuff like signing the deed over, accepting the cash, things like that. So they kind of just keep everything nice and organized. Before closing, they'll give you a sheet with a nice little itemized summary of what all the prices are and what they're for, so you can go through there and look through everything. There's a section for agent commissions, there's a section for insurance, mortgage fees, all that stuff. And if, let's say you're the seller and you're giving the buyer a closing credit, it'll show up on there. Vice versa, any expenses that the buyer has at closing, it'll show up on there. And in advance, they'll tell you, hey, you have to bring this much money as a cashier's check or as a traveler's check or as some other, or a wire transfer, at closing, you'll have to bring something like that as well. They just make sure that the whole process runs smoothly, that there's no issues at the end. They also do a title search. So basically, they'll look at the property and make sure that there's no liens on the property, like no unpaid taxes, no unpaid bills. Make sure that no one's put any sort of assessment on the property to where you wouldn't own it free and clear, that someone else would have a claim to it. They process that for you to make sure that the home is genuinely yours at closing and that there's no issues along the way. And you can purchase something like title insurance for additional security, but by and large, they do a good job of looking through the property and make sure that it is all legitimate at closing for you. So they're kind of, you hear a lot about lenders, you hear a lot about us agents, but they're a very essential part of the transaction as well, because without them, it doesn't stay organized and you don't know what you're signing at closing. And then after the closing, they file all the paperwork with the appropriate places. They send the paperwork to the lender, they send all the title documents to the county for recording and processing. So then that way the home actually does transfer officially and legally to the other owner. Usually there's an attorney at each title company that reviews all these documents, answers any questions, makes sure that everything is going smoothly and legally. I hope you learned something. I hope this was interesting. Definitely keep your title agents in mind. Your agent usually has a few companies that they work with or that they usually keep in mind for processes like this. So if you're ever curious about it, just ask them to tell you more about it. Thank you. Have a great rest of your week. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you next week.